I'm sure that somebody will make best 3, best 5, best 7 or best 10 new things in 2023.2 or February release of Home Assistant. But I just couldn't make up my mind. So here are all the fun things that you can find in the new release of Home Assistant. We'll start in a couple of seconds. Before we look at what's new in the 2023.2 release or February release of Home Assistant, quick information. This video has been recorded on the beta version, Beta 5, and this was the latest beta version available at the time of the recording. Some of you are screaming, spoilers, spoilers. Actually, this is open source project and there are more or less no spoilers. Everything that you see here is available as a part of beta program and everybody can join directly from Home Assistant. Also, even the features that will be released in one of the future versions of Home Assistant are available on the GitHub repository. So if you go at the development track and see what's been added and worked on, you can see things that may happen in March, April or even next year. About a year ago, I recorded video on Home Assistant Conversations and the link to it will be up here. This year, Conversations has been renamed to Assist. If you have activated Conversations in your Home Assistant, you probably had a mic like this. If you would click it, it would enable to dictate if there is an enabled microphone, or you can type the command. For example, turn the piano off, which is the piano light. And the system would respond, turn piano off. But I will not be going into details about conversations because there are no more conversations in Home Assistant. Instead, we have this icon here, which looks like a text message that you can press and also type your command. Turn the piano on. While it may look the same, the engine and everything behind it is actually completely redone from scratch. If you have watched my previous release video or the stream from Home Assistant crew, they talk about intents. And now, at the time of the release of this release, there are, if I'm not mistaken, 22 or 24 or 29 languages that are available in Home Assistant. And in prior releases, we received aliases, and aliases allowed us to have, for example, same entity named in English, French, Croatian, or whatever language we use. That way we can have, for example, UI in English language and still use Home Assistant in different language. My instance for now hasn't been tested with Croatian language, but I want to thank Stjepan, who is the leader for Croatian language and who is managing all the translations or supervising them. If your language is still not available, check out the link down in the video description where you can help out and translate some of the intents from the English language to your language. But the other thing that is also necessary for this to get developed is to create new intents. For example, some of the things that you want to see your Home Assistant being able to do either by typing or dictating, but is currently not available. Let me take a step back and talk a little bit about the voice from what we know for now. At this point, there is no specific hardware for it. Currently, at least from what we know, no Home Assistant smart device has been developed that will replace our Google, Amazon or Apple speakers. It may change by the time of the year, but from the information we got, currently this is not the focus. And the problem with the hardware is that if you want to have a very good hardware that can do wake up word, text to speech and speech to text, it costs. If you're keen to test everything, you can try and use Android Wear OS, Siri, or there is also option to use the Apple Watch. And from there, you can say verbal commands and Home Assistant will work with them. Later on, we will also mention OpenAI, because there is the option to use this internal engine, or you can put your money on the OpenAI and try to use OpenAI as a smart assistant for your Home Assistant. And some of you also may have question about the Raspberry and the possibility to integrate Raspberry wake-up words with this new integration Home Assistant or this voice functionality. From what the author of the Raspberry said, it may be possible, but it requires some work. Who knows, maybe when this video is released, we will see also that. But I know we will be talking a lot more about the voice in this year. And by the way, if you're interested to see more of the functionality, possibility to tweak and play with it, leave me a link down in the comment section below and I may just do a separate video on that. One additional change, and this is a really big change that you at first will not see the benefit of, but your system will. This is streaming history. Today, if we look at the statistics for the history, this is a static graph, meaning that if you want to reload new values, you have to reload them by hand. But giving us ability to stream the history data, meaning that the history data will update as soon as the sensor updates without us requiring to refresh the page or reload the graph or whatever, behind it there is a much bigger change. Home Assistant works like this. Every second it wrote something to the database. Every second it means that there was a lot of strain on your system to write all the data. But this has changed with this implementation. Now, by default, the system writes data every 5 seconds. And this puts a lot less stress on our hard drives, SD cards if you are still using them. And by the way, I do have one system running off of SD card more than 3 years and it's still working. And reducing writes from 1 second to each 5 seconds will give our systems a little more time or space to breathe. That's why this implementation brings two new things. First, live history data, and second, less stress and strain on our systems and databases. We also have the ability to create sensor groups. If we go to helpers, create helper and select group, we can now select also sensors. We can name it, and here from the list select all the sensors that we want in this group. After you have selected all the entities that you want to add to this group, you can select hide members or you can select type. The type can be minimum, maximum, arithmetic mean, median, most recently updated, statistical range or sum. Let's use median value here and let's press submit. We now have new sensor called all temperatures and it gives us this value. This is the median value from all the sensors that are inside my apartment. There are also nice two catches. I don't know if you have noticed them, and these are also the new changes in Home Assistant. Look at the temperature value. It's 22.715. It's not rounded to the full number. It doesn't have 2 but 3 decimal spaces. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. The next catch, maybe you haven't noticed, is that now when you select one entity from the list, that same entity will not be presented later on if you can select multiple entities. Let's check this one out once again. If we press on Create Helper, Group, for example, once again Sensors, let's call this Test Sensor, and let's type here Temperature. If we add AccuWeather Real Field Temperature, and list the temperature sensors once again, it will not be visible in the list. If you, for example, have multiple similar entities or entities that have part of the name that you want to filter them from, it will now be easier for you to create a list of all the entities, which is a nice addition. But let's get back to the precision of the sensors, which is also a big change in this release of Home Assistant. Previously, for example, if I look at the temperature sensors and I select, for example, this bathroom temperature, it usually represented value with 2 decimal spaces. Now it's all up to you how you want to see them and have them in your system. And by the way, this also changes what is recorded in the database. So if you remove precision from the sensor, that data will not be saved in the database. Go to Settings, select Precision, and as you can see, you can have more or less precise sensor data or entity data. If we look at our temperature sensor, you can see that we can go up to 6 decimal points. Let's talk about the ESPHome now. There are a couple of changes that may interest you in this release of Home Assistant. For example, one of them is the friendly name. If you are in the future adding a new device, you can opt in for a friendly name. Something that Home Assistant has had for some time has now been ported to the ESPHome, and that will help you identify your devices or have them look nicer in Home Assistant. Not like Atom Proxy, whatever this identifier is. This will not mess up your existing devices, and this only works for the new in the future devices that will be added to the ESPHome. Also, one big change. When the ESPHome started, no matter if this was add-on or Docker, API keys were needed, and API keys are now obsolete. If you are still using API keys, you should convert them or instead use encryption keys. Don't be like me. In your Home Assistant, you will see the information that the API password deprecated, and it will give information to, instead of using API password, go for the API encryption key. And the last thing, or the biggest change, is the ability for Home Assistant to now talk more frequently or more in depth with the ESPHome add-ons. And yes, this works only with add-ons. If you are using Dockers, unfortunately, this will not work because it doesn't have part of the functionality that is also part of the supervisor. So, if you are considering, check out this video on how you can run your Home Assistant, for example, on your NAS, such as Synology, where you can run it in a virtual machine. But what are some of the new information? For example, Home Assistant will pull the information on the updates, and if the update is available, you can click on the button and initiate the update of ESPHome. If there are multiple devices that can be updated, it runs one after the other. So you can stack them, but only one device at a time will be updated. But let's look some of the other noteworthy information, and there are a lot, and they can have a big impact for your system. For example, you can now add aliases to your areas. Remember, year of the voice, aliases, multiple languages, or multiple names for the same room. For example, I call this area here loft. My wife would call this area junkyard. My kids would call this area Dad, please stop. And that means that you can have multiple names or multiple aliases for the areas too. If you have sensor that is displaying watt hours, but you would like to see kilowatt hours, you can change it in the entity settings. One of the best integrations there is, Oral-B toothbrush, can now give you information about the battery state. So now you can trigger your automation and remind your neighbor to recharge his toothbrush. Automations and scripts in the UI now support selected entities for above or below in the numerical state, both for condition and for triggers. The Reolink integration has also received a lot of love in the last two releases. FLV streams, cameras can now be discovered on the network, and also binary sensors. And binary sensors can be used for internal Reolink sensors such as motion detection, person detection, vehicle detection, and if you're lucky one to have, doorbell presses too. There was an initial release of calendars, then some of the things have been tweaked, for example, edit was added, but now there is a service, and this service allows us to automate our events. We can automate our calendar by using services to create calendar events. We already talked about this one. When selecting an entity from the list in UI, it will now exclude entities that have already been added. I myself have always had issues, for example, when adding entities to the Lovelace UR or to the UI. This will help me in the future. And by the way, if you know me, you know that I'm not that good in dashboards. But last week I released video because I think that having Home Assistant that looks like LCARS or computer from the Star Trek is really awesome. So if you haven't seen that video, go check it out because it was a big flop. But still, I really like the video and I like the idea of having a dashboard look like LCARS or computer from the Star Trek. And yes, it also works on the NS Panel Pro. While you are already here, don't forget to click the like button down below. PoE sensors have also been added to the Unified Network integration. Tile card now has a vertical option. Jellyfin works with TV shows in the media browser. Chip Matter SDK version used by Matter implementation has been bumped. The old style groups can now remove entities from the group by using the group set service, which is something that was requested but now has been added. But besides ESPHome changes, besides addition of the voice or start of the year of the voice, there are also ton of new integrations. Let's go through them. Energy Zero will interest you if you are Dutch. You can retrieve the dynamic or hourly energy and gas prices from them. Eufy Smart Scale, which I didn't know even existed, has been integrated in Home Assistant over Bluetooth. Google Mail has been added and it provides service to manage Google Mail autoresponders and provides a notify service to drafts and send emails. One thing that I particularly like is this addition of the LD2410B or BLE. Actually, the model is called B. This is a, they say here $4, but actually to EU it's around €6 device that you can buy off of AliExpress. It looks something like this, no without wires I had to solder on it, but this is actually all you need to have detection and presence sensor in your home. Just this small module, 2 wires to provide it with power. It can be powered from 5 to 12 volts. And this device will now be automatically picked up by the ESPHome Bluetooth proxy. When you power the device, if you have Bluetooth proxy enabled and working in your system, you will see the pop-up that the new device has been discovered. Click on Configure and it will be magically added to your Home Assistant. When we click on one device, we see that we have 27 sensors. The device really works very fast. I still haven't had time to play with it too much, but it works and I hope to play with it on a future streams. Mopeka integration for the propane tank monitors, also added to Home Assistant. OpenAI conversation has been added. Let's talk about this for a second. I mentioned that you can have two options, internal intents from Home Assistant and also OpenAI. If you want to play with it, and I would call it a replacement for Google-like assistants that can be fun to talk with, but currently do not have any additional value to the Home Assistant. You can add it very easily. Click on the link, click on Login. If you have created previously account, I did. I will continue with the Google. Select my account. As you can see, I already have two keys. Let me create new secret key. Copy it. OK. And let's head back to Home Assistant. In the integrations page, click on Add Integration, type Open, select OpenAI Conversation, paste your API key and click Submit. This should be it. Click on Finish and let's check if this integration is working. Click on the Assist button and we now have here at the bottom of the page powered by OpenAI. Tell me a funny joke. Yeah, it's not that funny. You can pull your water usage meter readings from Read Your Meter Pro account. Ruby integration has been added. There is now integration for the SFR broadband router. Starlink has also finally received the integration. And also integration about Zever Solar and StockVizer, or whatever the actual name for this Netherlands-only integration is. Rainbird, IMAP, D-Link are now available via the UI. And there are a lot of breaking changes. As always, please go through each and every one of them. Some may not impact you, others may be hidden, so just open and read up. The list really looks long but actually is not long. Almond has been removed because the official site has been removed. Also, Open Automatic License Plate Recognition System Local has previously been deprecated and now has been removed. This is just the February or second release of this year, and this release is already feature packed with the new fun stuff, but also improvements to the existing integrations or twists to them, such as, for example, group of sensors. What are your thoughts on this one? I really would like to hear what do you think is the best or the worst thing that has been added. Remember, same as with Matter, this implementation of the conversations called Assist is still getting a lot of love and it's far from perfect. But you can help if you help with the translations and also thinking of some of the intents that haven't been previously thought of. I did mention this sensor here. And I do believe that in the future we will see more and more simple projects in terms of DIY that will bring a lot of benefits to our home assistant or smart homes. I also want to thank all the wonderful people that are supporting me and that have become YouTube channel members. Thank you all for all of your support. And also thanks to each and every one of you who has watched, liked or subscribed to my channel. If you too want to support the channel, you can do so by clicking the join button down below and becoming a YouTube channel member, or going to the link also down in the description of the video and buying something from the merchandise store. If you did like this video, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button, because it not just means very much to me, but it also helps with the YouTube algorithms. And I will be seeing you next time. Until then, live long and prosper, bye bye and have fun.